2023 budget. National Assembly leadership urges federal government to complete legacy projects. House of Representatives questions cost of Nigeria's gas to liquid project. And House investigates incessant national electricity grid collapse. The 2023 proposal, dubbed Budget of Fiscal Consolidation and Transition, has been laid before a joint session of the National Assembly, where we'll be bringing you the initial reaction of some members as part of this week's package. Welcome to you and your reps on the NTA. I am Victor Azu. Thank you for joining us. Leadership of the National Assembly wants the federal government to focus on completion of legacy projects in 2023. Now, this submission was made when President Buhari submitted the 2023 draft budget for consideration and approval during a joint session of the National Assembly. National Assembly correspondent Lami Ali was there.
It is the last budget of the Buhari administration submitted to the last joint session of the 9th National Assembly. What was poignant at this historic moment is the promise by the leadership of the 9th National Assembly of sustaining the January to December budget cycle by early passage, an action that has become a trademark of the 9th Assembly since Nigeria's return to democracy. Beyond the formalities of efficiency, the President of the Senate and Speaker House of Representatives struck a chord when they mentioned oil theft and its devastation to the economy.
The large-scale and massive stealing of our oil is concerning, as this reduces drastically the revenues available to the government. Projections have put our losses from this melee at between 700,000 to 900,000 barrels of crude oil per day, leading to about 29 to 35% losses in oil revenue in the first quarter of 2022. This represents an estimated total fall from 1.1 trillion naira recorded in the last quarter of 2021 to 790 billion naira in the first quarter of this year.
Arising from the reports of a massive decline in the volume of crude oil exports due primarily to theft and diversion by criminal elements. It is the sense of the House of Representatives that those engaged in these activities are agents of economic sabotage, determined to bring our country to its knees. Therefore, our position is that their actions constitute treason against our country, for which they and their enablers, whoever they may be, must be held accountable to the fullest extent permitted by law.
They also shared in the vision of the current administration in its drive for reform in key sectors of the economy to improve service delivery to the people.
Pushing for concerted efforts toward ridding our nation of criminals, the National Assembly will continue to support the executive arm of government in finding permanent solutions to insecurity in our country. Let me at this point commend our defense and security forces for working harder. There is still some work to be done though.
We are once more reminded of the phoenix nature of public service and the obligation to make the most of our time to deliver on our promises to the Nigerian people. It is often said that it's not how well you start, but how strong you finish.
The Senate and House of Representatives will, in the next couple of days, commence consideration of the 2023 Budget of Sustainability and Transition, meant to lay solid foundation for incoming administration.
And ahead of presentation of the draft appropriation, the House of Representatives advised the federal government to significantly reduce tax exemptions and waivers for corporate organizations to cushion budget deficit, which by projections is put at 11.3 trillion naira for 2023. Now, this formed part of recommendations considered and approved during plenary, as contained in the report from the House Committee on Finance on the Medium-Term Expenditure Framework and Fiscal Strategy Paper 2023 to 2025.
The consideration and approval of recommendations contained in the MTEF FSB report from the House Committee on Finance was the main business at plenary. The reduction in tax exemptions and waivers will enable more savings by government, legislators say.
High waiver and tax exemptions for corporate entities have contributed significantly to prevalent budget deficit.
Placement of more revenue-generating agencies of government on cost of collections, as it is with the Federal Inland Revenue Service and the Nigeria Customs Service, were approved. Agencies affected are the Nigeria Communications Commission, the Nigeria Ports Authority, and the Joint Admissions and Matriculations Board, among others. The affected government agencies will, as a test, have approvals to keep a percentage of collections as Parliament works to effect the amendments in the Finance Bill 2023. The House Committee on Police Affairs also submitted its report on the budget for Nigeria Police Trust Fund. In another development, the House Committee on Reformatory Institutions has held a public hearing on the bill seeking the establishment of the Nigeria Correctional Service Trust Fund.
The new framework proposed in this bill will base in the newly created Nigerian Correctional Services Trust Fund the responsibility and resources for training and welfare of personnel, provision of equipment and all other material and machinery necessary for the effective operations of the Nigerian Correctional Services.
The bill is demand-driven a legislative response to increase and continuous call for reform of the Nigerian correctional system.
The service is strongly supporting the establishment of the Correctional Service Trust Fund and related matters, not only to ease over-reliance on budgetary allocation and augment the deficient and unpredictable budgetary allocations in managing the service, but also to address the systematic problems associated with the management of offenders in Nigeria.
The bill seeks improved funding to the service to efficiently run custodial centers across the country.
Elsewhere, the House of Representatives Ad Hoc Committee wants Chevron to answer some fundamental questions on the gas-to-liquid project it executed in Nigeria. The committee is asking Chevron to justify why execution of a similar project in Qatar cost $2 billion, but gulped $10 billion in Nigeria.
The House Ad Hoc Committee is investigating joint venture operations and production sharing contracts of the Nigeria National Petroleum Company Limited. The gas-to-liquid project was signed in 2005 between Nigeria and Chevron at the cost of $2.9 billion to stop gas flaring and protect the oil produced upstream. The team from Chevron told the committee that the escalation in cost was as a result of commodity crisis experienced in the course of executing the contract.
Some contractors did the same thing in Qatar for just about $2 billion. The same capacity, the same everything.
We all knew with NNPC this was very complex technology to be executed in this part of the world. And so, when project construction started in 2005, coincidentally, if you check the records, at that same time, commodity prices, including that of oil, steel, and what have you, started rising in the international market.
The committee, while cross-examining officials of the company, discovered that Chevron has not obtained some statutory certification from the Ministry of Trade and Investment. The chief executive of NNPC Limited, Mele Kyari, also made submissions before the committee as he cleared the air in relation to financial accounts of the NNPC.
There is no account that the NNPC operates that is not known to government and that is not known to the Accountant General of the Federation. We do operate our accounts. We always submit list of all accounts we operate. We make sure that we have appropriate approvals at all times to establish any account for this company.
As the committee continues the investigative hearing, it stresses that it will only entertain heads of agencies and organizations.
Meanwhile, the House of Representatives has passed a resolution to conduct an investigation into the incessant collapse of Nigeria's electricity grid. The issue was raised as a matter of urgent public importance by Representative Sani Bala.
The state of power generation and distribution, according to the lawmakers, has been a poor narrative since the privatization of the sector in 2013. Representative Sani Bala said the national grid experienced more than 100 collapses since then. In 2022, the national grid collapsed 7 times. This development, whereby all key power generating plants experience a shutdown at once, they say, calls for concern.
The issue of system collapse may not be unconnected with the transmission companies of Nigeria's lack of wheeling capacity, inadequate transmission lines and spinning reserves, as well as refusal to fast-track construction of digital control centers instead of the company's current analog system.
The essence of this investigation should go to finding what we can do as a country to cure the issues of power generation, transmission, and distribution.
The House Committee on Power is to conduct the investigation. 2 other motions urging the rehabilitation and reconstruction of damaged roads in parts of Kogi and Delta states were adopted. Bill to establish a Federal Medical Center, Uromi, Edo State, sponsored by Sergius Ogun. Bill to amend National Emergency Management Agency Act from Henry Wauba, and bill to enact the Notaries Public from Ugonna Uzuribu passed second reading.
To provide for the appointment of Notaries Public, their registration, and to regulate the duty of the Office of the Notary Public, and to make provisions for the performance of the digital and remote notarization of documents.
Meanwhile, management staff of the Institute of Social Work in Nigeria were at the National Assembly to express appreciation over the passage and signing into law of the Act, thus giving legal backing to the institute, which has been in existence for more than 10 years. The Act will further streamline operations of social workers.
The Chief Whip is said to be responsible for order in the legislature. But to what extent? Let's find out.
He provides decorum. He leads, he orders, he ensures discipline when House is in plenary. He enforces the rules of the House as it relates to debates, movements within the chambers when House is in plenary. He ensures this way. He calls the attention of any member that seems to be distracting the proceedings of the House. He will call him to order, and he is supposed to order such a member to go and sit down, or any member distracting the attention of the Speaker from presiding. So his role essentially is that of ensuring discipline and decorum in the House. If it goes to a point where a member or some members are so unruly that they are obstructing the peaceful conduct of the plenary, they can be asked by Mr. Speaker to desist. If they refused, that is the point at which the sergeants at arms are now invited to take such members out of the chamber. But we have never reached that point.
Under this bill shall be both in electronic and manual with the procedure.
Those in favor of the amendment say aye. Against say nay. Nay. The ayes have it.
And Mr. Speaker, we are all agreed that these necessary changes should be effected.
Those in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say nay. Ayes have it.
The National Assembly has received the 2023 budget proposal from the President with a promise to consider and pass before the end of the year. We however sought the reactions of some House members on the prospects and challenges of the document.
First and foremost, we need to look at different sectors of the economy to see, how we can adjust some metrics, especially in the area of oil, to see how we can, make that happen. We really need to focus on the economy to see how we can bring it down. I'm not saying that it is possible for us to get it back to where it was as at yesterday. It's very difficult to achieve that for now, but I think we can take it gradually. At least as at now, I think black market has gotten to above 700 naira per dollar, which is very huge. We have never experienced that in the history of this country. So if we can bring it down to maybe 30% decrease, I think that will make sense, so that when the next government comes on board, they will now see how they can bring it down to, the various minimum. So we should focus on how we can recover the economy, how we can, reduce the high rate of dollars to our naira, which is one of the reasons why, high cost of things in the country is something that people cannot really handle at the moment. So I think we are going to do well by looking at different levels of, different sectors of the economy to see how we can adjust the budget to accommodate those inadequacies that have been there for some years now.
The assumptions, we did 1.8 trillion, 1.8 million barrels of crude oil exploitation and export. Now it's come down to 1.69. That is the book arrangement. That is the what was budgeted last year, and today is 1.69 million barrels. But of course, for the past few months, we've been doing 800, half of your assumptions, half of your expectations. So the underlying issues are challenging. And when you are not able to meet your target, what do you expect? You begin to go borrowing, or you get back to a situation where you are in a state of helplessness. So what is critical is to all those underlying issues that impede you from production of oil, the level of stealing of crude, or the level of disruption of its flow, has to be curtailed. So those are the front-end issues that will make the budget implementable. And then there is a defect where you have assumption of 435 naira to the dollar. And in reality, in the market, it is 750. You do a reality check. Once you handle all those issues, if our dollar is exchanging 435, not for 750, if we are able to mine sufficient crude and export it sufficiently, then we'll be talking about, consolidation. But if you are going to harvest a lot of debt and a lot of deficit in the budget, then it's challenging.
We need to look at, that particular sector that handles, the issue of theft in our country. That's security. Insecurity is really the major problem. So we need to look at that area and then see how we can empower that particular sector, security agency in Nigeria, to see how they can handle that. I think they've been trying in the time past, but there's still room to improve on that, especially looking at the Niger Delta. I think we have really wasted a lot of resources when it comes to the issue of theft. So something has to be done in that regard so that we can close the leakages.
We have raised it repeatedly. If you go through the plethora of motions that have been moved in the House, it's been investigated, it's been moved, the controversy between NNPC and even the Navy. And you'll find out that we will say, physician, heal thyself.
With the general election now a few months away, you and your reps has been speaking with ordinary Nigerians on the streets of Abuja on their expectations through the campaign season. Now here's what we got.
It's high time Nigerians actually desist from vote buying, ballot box snatching and falsification of results, cheat and manipulation. Because I know the INEC have actually brought some innovations in the electoral system that may actually add clarity to what is happening. So my main appeal to politicians in Nigeria is to maintain peace and progress.
What they can do to assure peace is by creating that enabling environment for them to vote. Everyone wants to vote, but if the environment is not peaceful and conducive, they cannot be able to come out and vote.
If I am a politician or one of these aspirants, I will focus on my goals. I'll be determined to make sure that I win the race. I will not even have time all this hearsay, all this argument, debating, counter-accuses that politicians are accusing themselves. We don't need it.
And still on electioneering campaign ahead of next year's general election, what changes should be expected with regards to the 2022 Electoral Act? Deputy Minority Leader of the House, Toby Okechukwu, sheds some light.
The major difference is that, you transmit results electronically. But, any law is as good as the operators. If you are deliberate and you want to manipulate it, it's possible. And if there is no vigilance, it is also possible. So what is important is Nigerian people being vigilant so that the spirit and the letter of the law is observed, not in breach, but in compliance. So our expectation is that garbage in, garbage out. If you garbage in good results, you get. If you garbage in the inputs as from the electorate, that is the result you get. So the only thing is that there is a check between what you transmit and the documents that is possible to be altered in the process. So you transmit from the polling booth, and once you transmit, it goes to the central collection unit. And then you can now go do, from polling booth, you can now go do ward collation center, local government collation, state collation, then federal collation. The ones that the commissioner, the electoral officers, returning officers announce. Prior to this time, it could change in the process. It can change in transmission. But now, when you bring the final result from the returning officer, you cross-check it with the feedback from the booths. If there is any material alteration, then there is a question mark.
Indeed, eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. That's according to former U.S. President Thomas Jefferson. That's where we leave it on You and Your Reps. Thank you for your company. I'm Victor, as we'll see you next time.